today I'm going to talk about really the relationships behind all these physical objects, right? I'm going to talk about the circle of trust, from the Fockers, right? And how big data is important, but ultimately big data can't be a science project. Big data is about the relationship, the bend still a hug, right? It's about how we can create a relationship which ultimately gets to our guests, get to our fans, get to our shoppers. Because ultimately that's what we want to go, right? We want to create relationships with people. And the technology, the digital residue, the connected devices are great, but they're a means to an end. And today I want to talk to you about that end, that relationship building exercise, which is essential for this next evolution as we pivot into the IoT. So I was born somewhere around there, which is Zambia. I was born in a little mining town called Kitwe. The year before Hugo came up with his glasses. And, used to play in our backyard, probably like you played in your backyard. And in our house, we had a library. And, as libraries, were stocked in those days, you had the vinyl in the corner, had a few dog-eared, novels. And one of the things we had that my parents collected was Punch magazines. I don't know if you ever flipped through a Punch magazine, but essentially it was the sort of satirical document of the time, right? It's sort of the John Oliver of the turn of the century. Right? And it's interesting because I inherited a few of these documents. This is a compilation from 1906. And at the back of this, there's a view towards 1907, right? And what they did is they asked some of the illustrators to sort of predict the future. What was going to happen in 1907, right? And some of the little vignettes they put in were very tongue-in-cheek, right? So, here it's fireworks for daytime consumption. And they had, doctors doing, patient visits on hot air balloons. Right? But what they had on page 450 odd in the publication was this one, 451, which was a forecast for the coming year. And they had this woman and this man in Hyde Park. And the title for this prediction, again, probably very much tongue-in-cheek, was Development of Telegraphy, right? And seen in Hyde Park, these two figures are not communicating with one another. The lady is receiving amatory messages and the gentleman some racing results. Well, how prescient is that? How amazing that 100 years ago we were talking about the fact that we weren't communicating with one another anymore. We're sitting in a park, we have this box on our lap and it's spitting out a ticker tape of text. Right? Nothing's changed. And this view of the future in 1907, if you actually take it exactly 100 years from this date, we're here. To the month, when an individual stands up on the stage and talks about a device that will revolutionize the way that we communicate, a device that will let us absolutely do ambulatory messages, right? We'll fall in love with our devices. This is the her device, right? And a device that will give you data to allow you to do things, whether that be racing results, which is pretty much core to data on a phone right now, through to other data touch points which change the way we do business, change the way we socialize, right? And what I want to talk to you about in the first part of my chat is this first 100 years of being human. I don't want to talk to you about technology. I want to talk to you about the consumption of technology and how it's changed our lives fundamentally, and how if we get the way it changes people's lives going forward, we'll be able to run really, really productive businesses into 2015, 2016. So let me start here. Here's an insight that I use in our company a lot when we talk to customers, because people, when they meet with vendors, people when they meet with technologists, the first thing they want to know is, tell me about your technology. Tell me how it's going to change the way we do business. But ultimately, all the companies out there that really get it, they don't focus on technology per se. They focus on the customer experience. And the companies that get it right reap the benefits. I mean, if you look at the S&P 500, the companies that get it right, the guys that are excelling and not the laggards, are the guys that get that human insight. The guys that can communicate to their customers and drive affinity and stickiness with that customer and that fan on an onward going basis. So with that in mind, let's take a look at what's happening in the streets today. So yesterday, walking up Spadina, saw a bus, Remax ad, no app required. What is that telling us? It's telling us that customers are trying to cut through all the digital red tape, cut through all those layers which really inhibit them connecting with their customer, delighting their customer. If I can eliminate the app layer, great. I'm closer to my customer, I'm closer to conversion, I have less abandonment of intent. It's all good, right? If you look at a street book, and an ad from Booking Now, which is obviously the operative word for any business, your perfect room in 2 taps, right? Again, trying to count clicks to commerce, trying to count clicks to conversion, because every click is a precipitous drop-off, right? Essential for you to know, because every click you design in your application, in your service, every door you ask them to go through, whether it be physical or virtual, is going to drive drop-off. So somebody like, at Amazon, they patented the whole concept of one-click checkout. Why? Why was that a fundamental pillar of their business? And continues to be a fundamental, not just marketing pillar, but a fundamental business pillar of the way that they go about engaging with somebody and checking them out, right? And so one-click checkout is essential for you to go out and in an impulse way buy your bounce, right? But if I can't take the clicks out of the conversation, and if I can just get this person off the phone, even this, I'm always in the now, you see. So if I can actually say, you know what, you need bounce, you need tide, that's great. So you're in the middle of washing things and you don't have enough. So why don't you go and find your phone? Why don't you open the phone, put in the password, get through, find the app, open the app, then find the product, then get to the checkout. Yes, maybe my credentials are saved, still have to click, still have to accept, and that's my one-click checkout. Ultimately, if I could have an impulse checkout where I can, in the middle of my routine, click a button that stores all my credentials and literally will go through Amazon Prime, through my Wi-Fi, alert them that there's somebody in desperate need of Tide, and the Amazon Prime, lieutenants are out there and they're coming to my house within 24 hours. That's a beautiful thing. And so the whole idea of understanding the human behind the machine is understanding how to optimize our business for that person, right? So I kind of want to get away from this whole digital revolution, because digital is just a means to an end. Ultimately, it's not about digitizing your life, it's about immediatizing your life. It's about doing things in an optimal way. Now, absolutely, digital could be a component of that, but that's not a fundamental building block. A fundamental building block is understanding your consumer. So,
Put up their hand because they feel comfortable with it.
let's move on. If you don't get that insight, well then suddenly you're deer in the headlights, right? You are looking at technology, you're looking at HAL 9000 and going, oh my gosh, technology is taking over and woe is me, right? And I really need to switch this off. So ultimately, you need to have a strategy which allows you to embrace that immediacy, to embrace those challenges in your business. Otherwise, you're going to be here, and ultimately, you're going to be here in an industry that has been disintermediated, the book industry. Here's a stroll down Bloor Street, guys. Okay? Book City, out of business. What does the Book City manager put in the window? Thanks for the tip. I'll get it on Amazon. Woe is me! You know, they showroomed me. I don't have a business. Well, ultimately, that is a sorry state of affairs for the book industry, but ultimately, it's because they're deer in the headlights and they didn't adapt. There are ways that you can grapple with the whole idea of clicks to commerce and embrace that. Embrace that to drive a new relationship with your customer, a new relationship with your fan. So, with that in mind, I want to talk to you about new industries that are just jumping up all over the place, right? So when I came down here today, I ordered an Uber, right? And historically, when I would go out into the street and I would flag a cab, you'd think that would be a very, very human thing, right? I'm on the street. I have intent to get somewhere. I have a cab that is saying, I'm in the business of getting you somewhere. You put up your hand, it stops, it says, hey pal. You go in, you say, nice day, where are you going? It should be a beautiful human experience. What has happened, because of digital becoming warmer, becoming more of a trusted partner in the way that we navigate, cars like this, the cab companies are looking dusty and old world. And it's the digital guys that are looking warm and friendly. And if I can hail a cab to my house and my daughter runs out and she's following them down the street and she sees it sliding up and she goes, hey! And she knows their name and they know my name. That's a warm and beautiful experience. It's the same experience you have with Instacart. Instacart is taking back what the grocery stores threw out. Grocery stores, also, tight margin business, right? What happened in the old world? You had the grocery store, you had a relationship with the grocery store owner. Grocery store owner, basically hired little Johnny. Little Johnny used to get the groceries together and run it to Mrs. Jones, right? But what happened is, we cut that out. We cut that out because the margin wasn't there. But now what happens is a company like Instacart comes back, introduces the love back into that relationship. Now you don't have a relationship with the grocery store. You have a relationship with this dude. And he's a digital dude. That's an amazing thing. And so you get that everywhere. Welcome home. I'm going to an online portal that's offering me home. It's offering me warmth. It's offering me trust. Digital trust. Digital bear hugs. The Ben Stiller digital bear hug is what we're trying to achieve here. And so when we look at the new businesses out there, and we get challenged in the technology of clicking, and you look at the new businesses, and they're all talking about IoT. And the Internet of Things, and how we can actually take, our cabs and our grocery stores and our apartments and turn them into a digital relationship. There are companies out.
How big of a business?
This one out of South Africa that's trying to become a backbone for the IoT, and they've come out with a platform called Ubuntu, and Ubuntu in Zulu means the quality of humanness. Right? A platform for a new generation of digital, a new generation of connecting things. And it's called Human-ness. And that really is the core of what I'm going to talk to you about today. So, where this all starts is in something that people like to continue to remind you existed way back when, which is a truck somewhere trying to communicate some data to a server somewhere. They say, hey, the IoT, the Internet of Things, it starts here, right? And so, you know, when people talk about M to M, they say, well, really IoT is just a rebranding of machine to machine. But ultimately, asset tracking and smart grids and building automation is imbuing things with some smarts. And there's an evolution of that, of course. But when the Wall Street Journal turns around and says the Internet of Things is reaching out a trucking business, like as if this is something new, we need to take a step back and understand that this is just an evolution from a truck, you know, going back 20 years, who would store data and maybe upload it once a day or once a week to real-time data collection and real-time data management, which is interesting, and there's huge value in that from a B2B perspective. But what I want to talk to you about today, which is so much more relevant to this crowd, is the fact that that view of the IoT is very much machine in the middle, right? It's that stormtrooper in the middle, right? And the stormtrooper you could shoot with impunity. Remember, Star Wars, you know, bam, 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 they used to die, like, they just, no blood. It was fun, right? That's why, you know, Lucas got the PG rating, man, because you could shoot those guys, they died, you never knew they were human. There was supposed to be flesh and blood behind them, because the whole idea of the stormtrooper is it's armor cladding on top of all those, you know, different sort of species that would come in and get, you know, seconded to the army. But ultimately there was no blood, so it was human in the middle. Where we're going here is to very much a different view of the world. And so the truck B2B, M2M sort of paradigm is valuable, but really when we're talking about the IoT, we're talking about how does the human fit into that equation? How does the H fit between the M and the M, right? And that insight, that human insight, is what's going to drive M to M into ubiquitous internet with a very different spin. And we're going to talk about that today. So let's go back to Comdex, right? Comdex, I think it's around 2001, right? Bill's there. He's so excited, right? Why is Bill excited? Because he just came out with a tablet PC, right? And he says, dude, not only is it super cool, not only is the tablet PC super cool, Bill said that we're so fired up about this tablet PC that all our engineers are taking the tablet PC home with them, but they want to play with it. Well, that was the problem. This was a technologist coming out with a technology solution with no insight into the consumer. Bunch of engineers with styluses, right? And a few years later, this guy comes on stage, offers us something which delights us. What does Steve Jobs say about styluses? Anybody? We're born with 5 of them, right? He was very much focused on the way that we interact with font, the way that we interact with, you know, the screen. He was not a technologist. And so what he did is he allowed us to pinch and zoom into data. He allowed us to interact with things in a very human way, and that allowed us to embrace the technology and jump into maps and explore things on the fly, even though it was on a rinky-dink little screen, right? And that inspired people to fall in love with the technology and, you know, line up for blocks for this, because it wasn't about, oh my gosh, isn't this the coolest technology? It became very much an extension of the way that they interacted with the world, right? I had a panel earlier today, we were talking about tiny screens, And I quoted from Freud, who talks about, the fact that even pre-technology, that we want to make ourselves supermen, ourselves things that can extend our capabilities, right? So he may be talking about a sword or a wig or something like that, but ultimately when we continually carry a phone around with us, it becomes a prosthetic. And Freud talked about the fact that we like to be prosthetic gods, right? This became an extension of the way that we dealt with the world, right? So, and really, as I said, really the evolution of the phone was from this to this. What really changed? Ultimately, it was about communication. Form factor was great. I could put it in my pocket. It made it more convenient to chat with people. But ultimately, it was about a relationship that I had, and this facilitated it. And the only technology that we're really talking about in this is voice and text. What happened with this device, which is so profound, is that this device, because of all these sensors and all this stuff that was put into the device, turned it from a machine to the first IoT thing. Right? This was the first IoT thing. This was the first internet that educates thing. And as Ralph Simon, who may or not be here tonight, but he's in the crowd, talks about the intelligence of things. And ultimately, that's what we talk about. How can things imbue humanity? How can we go up to them and not be deer in the headlights, not say, oh no, hell 900, don't shut down my aircraft and leave me out in space. How do we say, you're part of me. You're a prosthetic extension, right? So, and so it's very much the human embracing the M. And I'm going to talk about this digital duct tape a lot, right? And so for the next little session, I want to talk to you about pelicans and duct tape. I want to talk to you about how we can connect all these things, whether they be physical things, whether they be digital things, whether they be interpersonal things, and make our businesses more successful, whether that be shopping, having a venue and engaging with fans, whether that be a city interacting with their citizens more intelligently, a bank interacting with more intelligently. That is really where we're at. We're at this incredible point where we're moving out of the confines of a browser and an app store into the real world. How exciting is that? How exciting, because our last 10 years, the last 15 years, we haven't done anything except talk about digital. And digital is one little widget in our day. If suddenly digital permeates everything we do, then we have so many more businesses, so many more opportunities as we grow. So part two, we're going to be talking about pelicans, and we're talking about the duct tape that connects all of the things around us. So here's my pelican, and just go watch this. It's a beautiful thing. Is the relationship that we have with this object here is profoundly different. We had to, with this object, if just on the side looking at this pelican, the way that we interact with things, the way that we see things, the way we talk to things, it changes our relationship profoundly. And as we move forward, we need to think of these things, toasters and cars and watches, and we need to connect those things with intelligent actions, right? So we have a pelican, we connected it to a GoPro, it took on a different relationship, right? So you take that same idea and you can shove GoPro into your dishwasher. And I know you guys are staying up late at night saying, gee, I wish I knew what happened in that dishwasher when I turned it on when I go to sleep. Oh my God, you shove a GoPro in there. And isn't that exciting? But this thing, married with digital duct tape to an action, does profoundly change our world, right? So But if I was able to mitigate a knob turn and talk to my washing machine in a human way, the same way that I talk to my daughter when I say, it's 12:30, where are you? If I could say to my dishwasher, 12:30, could you just change the cycle? That allows me to have a different relationship with that inanimate object. It allows for huge business opportunities. So when we have a basketball and we put a sensor into a basketball, then that basketball, who always wanted to tell you, Gary, your game sucks, you know, now can tell you. The data now has the ability to take the inanimate object and turn it into something that can communicate to you and also change your behavior. Because now you can say, spin a little bit to the left, and you'll get it in the net, right? It changes the relationship between you and your coach and the ball. And the ball becomes part of that inner circle, whereas the ball was really relegated to this object world. The same holds for a smart outlet, right? A smart outlet is sitting there. The only thing you can do when you have a kid and you don't want them to put a fork into the outlet is put a plastic plug into it or cage them up in another room. Ultimately, this should also have the intelligence of a basketball to decode what's happening around them. To say, oh, Sally, no, that's not good. The plug should be able to have that specific intelligence, that targeted intelligence, to say that, you know what, I don't recognize this as a plug, I'm going to shut down. Isn't that cool? So, you know, look, the hype is around wearables, and Fred knew this way, way back, right? And so did Dick Tracy. We all knew that we wanted to be superheroes, right? We want to be prosthetic gods. We want to have things on our wrists that we could look at and go, you know, into infinity and beyond, right? But ultimately, we've reached that point, right? And we've embraced that moment. But really, has it profoundly changed the way that we interact with the world, right? We had a panel this morning where we were laughing about the fact that, you know, hey, somebody in Apple marketing called in and said, you know what, guy, we got that Nano, let's put a wristband on it and rebrand it, right? So, you know, the fact that we have a screen and the fact that, you know, Apple tends to, you know, it's a little bit more intelligent about the way that it nudges you and says, hey, you've got a message, that's great. But ultimately, it's just a peripheral screen. The fact that this one calls your car, this is a BMW, you know, sort of Fido call, right? So you call and little Fido comes through the parking lot and meets you outside, right? It's programmed to know how it parked so it can retrace its steps and the car can come out and meet you in the street. You know, through to basically, at the end of the day, fashion wear, right? Is this profoundly changing the way we communicate if it's not necessarily making us better humans, right? Why did we give up on Google Glass? We gave up on Google Glass because ultimately, if we need a data snack, the social way to do that is to say, sorry, I got a call coming in. I apologize. But to serendipitously do it or nefariously do it is not really a social norm. And that's why, you know, Google Glass had a hard time. iWatch is cute. It'll have a hard time too. Ultimately, what we have to battle through here is not creating, you know, cool little widgets. It's understanding how to create a social narrative on top of all these new screens, all these new interactions. And ultimately, screens may not be involved at all because the optimal way to engage with something is to intuit. And if you can intuit a behavior, you don't need the screen because you do not need to have a dashboard to interact, right? I have a buddy who works for a company in New York called Two Bulls, and they do stuff for Sesame Street and whatnot, and they're really good at narrative. Right? They came up with a game where you can walk through Central Park and you can hold your phone and you see trolls and pixies. It's a game. It's really cool, really nice. Suddenly, they're working for Qualcomm. They're working for Qualcomm, putting together a narrative for the all-seeing alliance. That's where the opportunity is going from the widgets and going from all the coolness to understanding how to connect these things in a way which isn't like programming the damn VCR, right? And so if you don't get that, where do you land up? You land up from the gift box to the sock drawer, right? How many wonderful gifts did you get on Father's Day and Mother's Day that ended up ultimately in a drawer somewhere? Because the Fitbit was great and I used it for a few months and then it was like, okay, you know. Ultimately, if these things can't fit into our lifestyle, if they don't become seamless, and you don't, and this is what, you know, the Two Cows founder Noah told me on the phone, if you can't find the ghost inside the machine, that quiet relationship with the technology which allows you to communicate to it, then you're missing the mark, right? And you end up under the socks, forgotten, right? And wearables are in that danger zone. If you look at the drop-off in the Gartner hype chart, the sales and abandonment of those items, it follows the Gartner hype chart exactly the same trajectory. You go up, you buy a lot, and then ultimately the market diffuses because there's just so many cool things that you can buy one Christmas that you don't need the next. So what we're seeing now is the same hype that happened around the App Store, right? Everybody had to have an app. You know, Apple, great marketing, easy SDK, got to build an app because I've got to be on the App Store. God forbid somebody searches on the App Store and I'm not there, right? And so what's happening now is we're building a physical app store. If you go into an Apple store right now, or you go into an electronics store, you will see a shelf of physical products that are essentially physical apps for the real world. This is your IoT shelf, right? You know, whether it be, you know, a Nest thermostat through, you know, to a garage opener, tons of things that are, you know, supposed to enable your life, right? And the physical app store is here as well, right? So I have a bike. It's an IoT bike. It has software embedded into the bike, which allows me to intuit not only my Fitbit style sort of tracking, but also the road and cars around me, and there's haptic feedback in the handlebars to say, hey, there's a car to the left, and oops, you know what, somebody came here last week in this network of bikes. Sally was riding down the street and she like nearly killed herself in a pothole. I can tell Sam the next day that, dude, somebody on our network nearly broke their neck there, moved to the left, right? And if I can create that sort of network value, if I can take that data and I can communicate to the person that's riding the bike about the pothole without getting them to kill themselves by looking at a screen to avoid the pothole, then I've done my job, right? And that's a challenge. That's a UI UX challenge. It's a very human challenge as we move forward. So you have, as you know, technology out there that is supposed to be changing our life. Now you have the Nest network, right? Bought by Google. Nest was a device made by a bunch of guys from Apple, parachuted from Apple. Beautifully designed device because they're Apple guys, and Google bought them. And on top of that is starting to create a network for the smart home. And so the Nest thermostat is in the center of that, talks to your Wi-Fi, and now they go out and they buy a drop cam as a company, adds it to their portfolio of essential things that they are, offering somebody who's on the Nest network to manage their home. And then at the last CES, starts pulling in all these partners, lock companies and smart dishwashers and Qualcomm lighting initiatives and Philips, all to be part of their network all through the charging stations for the car, so that your house essentially becomes a dashboard. Now, there are two ways of looking at this. Nest is a private network, but it's managed in the public cloud. So it goes through your Wi-Fi into the public internet. Now, you have another way of looking at this, which is the All-Seen Alliance, which Qualcomm is at the center of. And they look at the world a little differently. So they will take a chip, and the chip has all the intelligence embedded in the chip, plus Wi-Fi to network, mesh network their solution into lights. And so they will, you know, in a world, I don't know if you know, but Qualcomm is pretty much patents locked up on phones for past generation phones. They're getting into a bit of a quandary, but they don't have patents moving forward into next generation phones. So they literally take 9 pennies of every 10 pennies that are spent on a phone through their patents. It's an amazing legacy operation. What other technology can they get into which is ubiquitous as phones? You all have a phone, so if you counted, probably, roughly, there's as many phones in this room as there are lights, right? So if they can start getting a few pennies off every light, that's a good business too. Smart guys, Qualcomm. So ultimately, the difference is that the All-Seen Alliance is a private network managed through a parallel network. So it's private. It's private, and it manages itself. Now, these are crucial things because ultimately, somebody's going to hack your home. And somebody's going to hack your car. And somebody's going to hack into a community because it's on the internet. And things happen. But ultimately, these are the things that we're thrashing out. The IoT right now is really, the dust hasn't settled. You have Qualcomm, you have obviously the Googles of the world, you have the Intels of the world, you have every Leviathan out there trying to get a footing, get a network, get a relationship. Everybody has a different strategy, and one of these networks is going to become the predominant winner. So, you know, if we go back to our equation, a thing plus an action plus a network is really critical to how we build this IoT moving forward. It's not about you being connected to your toaster. It's about you being connected to your toaster, which is connected to the fridge to say you're out of bread, go and buy it, click here, order there, things happen. That network of value is the amplification of what we're talking about with the IoT. It's not about a cute little baby monitor which allows you to watch your baby from a distance. It's about the totality of creating a smart environment around your family, around your office, around your concert. So the thing to look for here is, does everybody know what a Nexus device is? Anybody has Nexus? Nod, nice device. And who makes the Nexus?
LG.
LG makes the Nexus. Who makes the Nexus? Google makes the Nexus, right? Well, actually, Samsung made the first Nexus. You're absolutely right that LG made the second Nexus, and the third one is now made by Motorola. Who cares? Who cares? These guys are commodity brokers. They just make the thing. The value is in the software. The value is in the fact that I want a Nexus device. Do I really care that it was made first generation by Samsung, second generation by LG, third generation by Motorola? No, because we get the operating system first. We get KitKat first before you Yahoos that went and bought the more expensive device, right? And ultimately, these guys can be disintermediated. Now, if you look at other industries, let's look at the car industry. If you go and talk to car industry guys like I do, and you speak to them about their business, they are very much in this business, right? Which is, you know, managing a keiretsu, getting tires from point A to point B, you know, oh my gosh, the paint shipment hasn't come in. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. The last thing they want to think about is what software is, that cute little thing that manages the songs on the dashboard and sort of ambient stuff in the car. Who cares, right? So you have Apple that comes in, has CarPlay platform, right? And then you had, you know, Google coming in with their open, automotive alliance, right? And could it be that suddenly when we start having these experiences in the car, and ultimately the car becomes a lot cleaner because it becomes maybe a self-driving car at some point, and ultimately the most important thing we do in that car is not drive it, but experience it. So
quick here.
my songs, the movies, the fact that the screen doesn't look at the road anymore, it shows me the movie that I can watch when I drive from Toronto down to Fort Lauderdale with the kids, right? So that software becomes more important than the wheels on. So these guys down here potentially become commodities, because if I can plug and play everything about my car lifestyle from one car to the other, do I really care if I'm moving from, a Nissan to a Ford? Do they become disintermediated from the customer because these guys got the humanness in the relationship? These guys built the network. And if that happens, then services come to your car that the car manufacturers can't participate in. So Volvo has this cute little pilot where you can deliver your groceries with a keyless entry. In other words, provisioning a key through the cloud, through an API to Amazon or DHL, so that you can take deliveries into your car in a secure way. Well, suddenly the evolution of lockers, when there's a huge business there, virtual lockers here and drop off my groceries there, suddenly your car becomes a delivery agent for you. You're at work, you order some groceries, they get delivered to the car, it goes into the back, I drive home, everything's good. The business that can radiate from a car or a home or an office that is reimagined is profound. And the relationship that we have with this car and the monetization that we can extract from this car will not be the physical wheels or the bricks and mortar of a store. It's going to be in the software and the relationship that we have with the people inside that store. And if we lose that insight, as they did with groceries with Instacart, they lose the financial opportunity that this vehicle has on the road. And so, you have Samsung buys a company called SmartThings. Oh my gosh, I got to get into the IoT race. At CES, they kludged some stuff together, all these little smart widgets. Can Samsung go into a community in North America and say, you know what? We make appliances, we make phones, we make really good security, right? Can I turn this from a generic community to a Samsung community? Can I be the Google takeover here so that when I go out to buy a home, I may want a home in Thornhill or downtown Toronto, but I kind of want to have the home in a Samsung community or Samsung safe community. And that is the power game that's going on right now, is that IoT hasn't really started, but when it happens, this battle will be already won. And you see in Korea, cities of the future, Songdong, sitting on top of a phone. It's not about this, it's about this. Who wins the digital battle wins the relationship with the person who's in the city and can monetize that relationship going forward. So when one of the CEOs of Samsung sits in a keynote at CES and talks about an open system, we want an open system. Just remember this. Open is a 4-letter word. Right? So the person who controls that relationship, the person who owns the system, is the person who's going to monetize that system going forward. So let's go back to our math. So we have a thing plus an action that has some value, right? Plus digital duct tape, a network, plus the crucial thing here, which is the data behind that network. And if you get all of those things, plus you have the Ben Stiller bear hug, and you have the love, and you have the insight into humanity behind that, and you add a little of that, then you can move forward in the future and embrace your business, embrace the vertical, whether you be in the entertainment vertical, whether you be in the retail vertical, or whether you be in the banking, financial vertical. It's all about going out into the street and giving your customer a hug that's extensible and allows you to do that in a digital way going forward. Thank you.
That was good and presentations I've seen in any of the 3 digital media summits. That was absolutely brilliant.
I rock! Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. Cheers.